dawladdu tallaabooyin ay qaaday ay kula dirirayso musuqmaasuqa kuwa waaweynna waa soo wadaa.
On May 12, 2023, President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud gave a speech at the Masjid of the Presidential Palace, where for some time he has been delivering speeches on the politics of the country. He delved into the very important matter of the fight against corruption that, it is a known fact, Somalia scored first place, unchallenged, after a comparison with other competing countries.
Please, hasoo daba kicin. Waa la baarayaa hadduu musuqmaasuq lahayn timbaraa la siinaya waana dalacayaa weliba meeshuu joogo meel kasii sarreysuu tagayaa aamin waaye ilaa maxkamadda waxay soo tiri ninkaan waxba ma xadin waa aamin tuugada lagu soo eedeeyey been waaye sax ma aha.
However, Somalia did not just reach this position, since it was caused by the successive governments that were entrusted to lead the country that became the home of corruption. Being the only one who has been elected twice, President Hassan Sheikh's first term was marked as the most corrupt government in the history of Somalia. Among the remarkable events that are remembered to this day are the looting of state properties handed over to his friends and relatives, abuse of power and a widespread lack of accountability that destroyed the country's institutions. The salaries of government employees and soldiers were put in private coffers, while illegal agreements that would have brought in billions were signed off in secret deals for mere millions, like the case of Soma Oil and Gas. But the worst example being the land given to the EU office in Mogadishu, which was a project that was supposed to cost the EU hundreds of millions of euros, which were exposed by the Somali presidential candidate, Mr. Abdijaliil Pharaoh, and Dalsu media who protested against the auction of their country's and people's real estate, which led them to take to court the EU's Mogadishu's office. Since one of the clauses of the agreement stated that a Somali national or a person of Somali origin was not allowed to work in the Halane compound, which is within the territory of Somalia. The result of this scandal was that the EU office in Brussels identified it as the Somali Gate, and are still ongoing the court proceedings between Mr. Abdijaliil Pharaoh and the EU office in Mogadishu, whose last hearing took place on February 26, 2023, while expecting a ruling favorable to Somalia.
The government of Somalia, the EU has trained police officers and legal professionals. We have also received great support in our effort to reform the public financial management, the civil services, while engaging with the local governance needs in the post-conflict environment of Somalia.
Therefore, the question is, if President Hassan Sheikh is truly fighting against corruption, is he ready to help end the ongoing case, and will he support Mr. Abdijaliil Pharaoh in this case, whose main responsibility belongs to the government of Somalia? Also, is he ready to reverse the 2012 to 2017 scandal and return the state properties that he signed off during his first tenure? Looking back at the first year of his second term, it has been acknowledged or remembered what happened during his first mandate, when the government offices were accountability and for the first time in 5 years saw state employees and the National Army complaining about the lack of their salaries, while the taxes collected by the government agencies were doubled, which informed sources said that the financial system best practices were not followed. Contracts and agreements were signed without going through the government's oversight system or were not openly presented. Somali citizens have been sacked or removed of their jobs and responsibilities without the due process of the law and have been replaced by the relatives of the leaders of the country. It is worth mentioning how President Hassan Sheikh defended the appointment of his daughter. While it is certain that if the position he entrusted her was open to competition, his daughter could not have won, since she does not have the necessary experience to hold that position. Is this considered corruption? Would the president accept that his daughter would compete in an open and transparent way for that position now? His government services, which are levying taxes from the people, not working at all. It has been reported that the president spends $470,000 on each trip, which is in addition to other unaccounted expenses of his trip. Is the president's office included in corruption cases that will be investigated? And if it is justified, what will be the actions to be taken against it? We are aware that the World Bank and the IMF have suspended the loan suspension plan, and soon their delegation will visit Mogadishu, and that is why the government is pressing and talking about fighting against corruption. The Council of Ministers has appointed a committee when things are already falling, when they have been requested for a whole year to bring about financial transparency and accountability. The country's federal states are no different than the central government in stealing state properties and entering into agreements with unknown companies, signing everything off without any concern for the legacy of the country and the people, and exchanging it for a few bucks. Corruption is not about firing young people and low-ranking directors and putting the blame on their backs for what happened, so that those who are responsible cannot be traced. Corruption has its seat in the highest offices of the country, trickling down from there. It is to wonder what's the point of having a parliament to whom the government of Somalia is accountable to, that keeps silent even after the president and the government both acknowledge the existence of such problems. What are they waiting for? The reality is that there is no institution that fares better than the others. The parliament itself came about through corrupt and biased practices, giving birth to the current government that was established through the same system. This is a big problem for the Somali people. In the end, the call of the president and his government to fight corruption looks like empty rhetoric. The truth is that Somalia needs leaders who work for the country and for themselves.